Hello, everyone, wherever you are. Thank you very much for joining us today for the Innovation for Cool Earth Forum 9th Annual Meeting, hosted by the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry and New Energy and Industrial Technology Development Organization. Now let us begin the co-hosted event by UNIDO, Facilitative Decade of Action Towards Just Industrial Decarbonization, responding to growing demands in developing emerging countries. First of all, I would like to invite the MC for the session, Mr. Torii Naoki, to the podium. Mr. Torii, if you please.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your participation today to the ICEF2022 UNIDO side event. My name is Naoki Torii. I'm an industrial development expert at UNIDO Energy Department, and it is my great honor to serve you as an MC to this side event. This side event focuses on industrial decarbonization, particularly in so-called hard-to-abate sector. We have distinguished speakers and panelists to discuss challenges and opportunities to accelerate our efforts to take this important pathway. So without further delay, let me first invite His Excellency, Mr. Vali Musa, for making his opening remarks of the event. Excellency, Mr. Musa, please.
Thank you, Mr. Master of Ceremonies. Ladies and gentlemen, in the first place, it is an honor and a privilege. I'll start again. Mr. Master of Ceremonies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor and privilege on behalf of the steering committee to welcome UNIDO once again to the International Cool Earth Forum annual conference. Your presence here enhances the stature of the conference and gives practical meaning to that which we are trying to achieve, which is to track innovations which do not really exist as yet for us to get to net zero 2050. This is the first conference, in-person conference that we are having in a number of years because of the COVID lockdown. And since the last time that we gathered here, which was in 2019, the world has already changed. It is during that period, particularly the last 12 months, that anybody who had any doubts about the severity of global warming and climate change and the severe implications for humankind and for nature, I think that all those illusions would have been dispelled, because we have seen floods and fires and every other kind of disaster that is imaginable. A highly developed and well-equipped region of the world, California, is unable to control the fires. And then if you look at the devastating floods in Pakistan, it just breaks one's heart. And it's for that reason that what is being discussed today really goes to the heart of the matter. We have to tackle the big, difficult questions. There is no easy question. There is no easy solutions to the greening and decarbonization of the steel and the cement sector. But that's what we have to deal with if we are to get to where we need to get to by 2050. I would like to just share with you a little bit about what I do, because I think that may be of value to you. When we talk about transitioning from high emissions to low emissions, that pathway and that strategy is extremely difficult for any nation to come to terms with. because the different sectors and the different interests in any country, in any domestic situation, compete with each other. South Africa, where I come from, is one such country. All of our electricity, almost all of our electricity, not all of it, a lot of our electricity, let me say, comes from the burning of low-quality coal. And so that makes us a relatively high emissions country. We are, of course, a low emissions country if you take into account historical per capita emissions and those sorts of calculations, but we do consider ourselves to be a high emissions country. And we need to move from there away. And what do we have? We also have a strong cement industry because we're a developing country, medium-sized country, and we also have a steel industry. We export iron ore in quite a huge way. It's a big export product for South Africa. So the coal-fired power stations and the collieries have, over the generations, resulted in the development of entire towns in parts of the country where you wouldn't have had development. There are towns which sit on the coal deposits and sit next to the coal-fired power station. If you shut this down, what happens to those communities, what happens to the workers, what happens to the clinics and the schools and all those things that exist over there. So in South Africa, at the beginning of 2020, the country established what is referred to as the Presidential Climate Change Commission. I'm the head of the Presidential Climate Change Commission. I was appointed by the President to do that. Technically, the President of the country is the President of the Commission. Is the chairperson of the Commission. I'm the Deputy Chairperson. But the important thing here is that this is an independent commission. It is composed of the four major groups in society. We have government that is a member of the commission. There are 7 cabinet ministers who serve on the commission. All of the ones, trade and industry, finance, mining, etc., environment, etc. Then we have the private sector represented on a commission at the highest level. And then thirdly, we have the trade unions represented on a commission. And fourthly, the non-governmental organizations, because as you know, non-governmental organizations are particularly interested in the question of global warming. And the task of this commission is to bring about national consensus on the pathway of how do we move from a high emissions to a low emissions economy. Because unless the strategy becomes a national strategy, one which is owned by the nation, it will not have consistency. We are trying to avoid a situation when a government administration changes that the climate change strategy should not change, because the climate change strategy of necessity is a multi-year and multi-generational strategy. And so far it has worked very well. We have been able to bring about, in a sense, climate peace in the country. There's large-scale agreement between all of those. Having said that, I wish you well in your discussions today. The ICEF will be looking forward to the outcomes and the summary of these discussions, and we would attempt to include it in the communication that we send out at the end of tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Excellency Mr. Musa. Now let me invite Mr. Yukihiro Kawaguchi. He's a Director for Industrial Green Transformation, Manufacturing Industry Bureau, Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, Government of Japan. Mr. Kawaguchi, the floor is yours, please.
Okay, thank you very much for your introduction. And my name is Yukihiro Kawaguchi. I'm Director in charge of the Industrial Decarbonization and Industry Manufacturing Bureau. And first of all, I really would like to all the guests, especially from the other country to Japan, because now Japan is opening, and even though it's rainy day today, but I really would like you to enjoy Japan and Tokyo, and this is the best season throughout the year, so that's really a good thing for Japan. So, and now let me briefly introduce myself. And actually for 4 years until July this year, I was in charge of the international affairs on climate change issue at METI, building strategy for example, COP26, 25, or G7, G20, and so on. And since that time, I have been aware of the growing pressure to industrial decarbonization and the need for international rulemaking in this field. And then in July this year, actually the post for this position, which is a director again for industrial decarbonization, was created in this manufacturing industrial bureau of METI. And I was appointed to this post. So since then, I feel not only the importance of industrial decarbonization, but also its difficulties. So what's the difficulties? And I recognize that since I came to this post, I recognize at least there are 4 challenges to achieve the industrial decarbonization. And first thing is that there is an overwhelming gap between current technology and those needed in the future to achieve the carbon neutrality. And let me say about the steel industry. And more than 70% of Japan's steel is produced by blast furnace. And the blast furnace uses coal to reduce iron ore, which produce, as you know, a large amount of CO2. And one way to reduce this CO2 emission to 0 is to use, for example, hydrogen for reduction. But this technology has not yet been proven on a practical scale in the world. And second thing is that the company will need to make huge investments to achieve the carbon neutrality in the future. For example, the investment required by Japan's steel industry to decarbonize by 2050 is estimated to be in the order of 10 trillion yen, which is around 70 billion US dollars. And third one is the market. And the market for green product is needed for this investment. However, in the face of international competition, creating demand for the product with higher price will not be easy. For example, China accounts for about half of the world's steel production, and more than 90% of China's steel is produced by blast furnace. And if China continues to supply cheap steel using conventional blast furnace, and the market continues to purchase that steel, it will be a difficult situation for the steel, Japan's steel industry. So again, this demand creation is really important, and I know that UNIDO is doing a really good job on the Green Public Procurement Initiative. And of course, the government cannot give a large-scale support without a willingness to invest by companies and the demand for carbon neutral product. So if we address these challenges only individually, we cannot realize industrial decarbonization. That's a challenge I feel recently. So to solve this government's business and market, business and markets need to take action simultaneously. And the signs of such action are now emerging, I feel. For example, the government has already been supporting corporate R&D for 10 years with a 2 trillion yen Green Innovation Fund. 2 trillion yen is around 14 billion US dollars. And in the steel sector, for example, the Japanese government decided to support to 20 billion yen, around 1.7 billion US dollars, in 10 years until 2030 for technological development toward carbon neutrality 2050. And steelmakers, Japanese steelmakers with blast furnace have also declared a goal of carbon neutrality by 2050. For example, they have also announced investment in large electric arc furnace. And in addition, the government has begun to consider supporting long-term private sector investment by raising funds through GX economic transition bonds to spearhead an investment of over 150 trillion yen, around 1 trillion US dollars. And Japanese government is also considering a combination of regulatory measures and fiscal mobilization to maximize effect of the government support. And finally, these efforts must also be pursued globally, of course. And at this year's G7, there was a progress in the discussion on the decarbonization of heavy industries led by Germany, who are G7 chair this year. And as a chair of the G7 next year, Japan needs to further advance this effort. And furthermore, Prime Minister Kishida has proposed a concept of the Asian zero emission community for the decarbonization of Asian countries, Asian regions. So against this background, this session discusses an extremely important topic. I hope that we will get some meaningful implication for the decarbonization of not only Japan, but the world entirely. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kawaguchi. So now let us turn to the next agenda item. We have today a keynote presentation provided by Ms. Tiffany Bass, Energy and Industry Researcher, International Energy Agency. Unfortunately, she was not able to be here with us physically at the venue today. Instead, the presentation was pre-recorded for the event. So it seems there is a little bit of technical problem. So please bear with us. Unfortunately, there is a technical issue to play the presentation. So let us play the video when this issue was addressed. And meanwhile, if you may, could we go straight into the panel discussion?
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much. So we will have the panel discussion with the representatives from private sectors and associations. Our moderator is Mr. Hoshino, project professor in the Department of Material Engineering at the Graduate School of Engineering of the University of Tokyo. So I'm sorry about this technical issue, but Mr. Hoshino, please, floor is yours.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Tori, thank you very much for your kind introduction. So, ladies and gentlemen, this room and remotely participants, and my name is Takeo Hoshino. I'm very honored to have the opportunity to be a facilitator for such a great panel discussion today. I'm currently a project professor in the Department of the Material Engineering and at the Tokyo University. So my field of expertise is industrial ecology, and I am researching the analytical method for quantitative life cycle estimation of environmental impact of basic materials such as iron and steel, copper, aluminum, magnesium, and so on. So the main theme of today's panel discussion is transition to the decarbonization society, mainly in emerging economy. So the goal of achieving carbon neutrality by 2050 is now not a governmental or national goal, but rather a goal of the industries or even each companies. Therefore, concrete action to reality by each company or each industry are essential to achieve the goal. However, industry is responsible for the providing various goods or services and essential to each country's economic development. The steel and cement or concrete were basic materials that are necessary for the building the infrastructure of society and they're needed for the large quantities in emerging countries. In supporting SDGs perspective in emerging countries, so we cannot restrict steel or cement production to reduce CO2 emissions. The transition to a decarbonized society, the strategy, should be a very complex, difficult task, as Kawabita mentioned. So today, we have 6 remarkable panelists. One attended the venue, so the 5 panelists are remotely. So first, let me welcome and introduce the 6 panelists. Okay, so first panelist is Dr. Ayman Farsi. Okay, he is a product development and quality control executive manager from Ed Steel in Egypt. So before this, he served as professor and researcher of material science and steel metallurgy at Central Metallurgical Research and Development Institute, Cairo, Egypt. Dr. Farsi, can you hear me? We cannot get your voice. So.
Yes,
okay, I hear you.
Thank you very much for your introduction. Yes.
Okay, so where are you in the world right now?
In Egypt, Cairo, in Sokhna, Suez, in Egypt.
Okay, Egypt, wonderful. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining this. Okay.
Thank you very much for the
introduction. Thank you. The second panelist is Anupam Padola. He is Mr. Anupam Padola. She is a deputy CEO, CSO from Dalmia Cement Bharat Limited in India. Padola-san, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. President, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much, Padola-san. He has a long-standing career experience in the field of the sustainability and climate change. Before joining the Dalmia Cement, he worked at Bureau Veritas Certification India as the lead verifier for carbon credit project. So, Mr. Padola, why you are in India right now?
Yes, I am based at Delhi.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, so the third panelist is Mr. Vinahidora Lugiarity. And Mr. Lugiarity, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, he is the division head corporate responsibility, mining industry, Indonesia. So, Mr. Lugiarity has more than 20 years of the professional experience in the corporate responsibility, in the sustainable development, and social performance area with various industrial fields. So, fourth one is Ms. Kanan Delios Gensel. Can you hear me?
Mr. Chairman, yes,
oh, okay.
I can hear you.
And Mrs. Kanan is the director of the Environmental Climate Change Department of the Turkish Cement Manufacturing Association. So Ms. Kanan is as an industrial sector representative. providing the continuous and reliable technology-based communication between the cement plants and the government and other energy incentive the sector organizations. Okay, next is Mr. Thomas Gill. Mr. Gill, can you hear me?
Hear you very well. Hello.
Okay,
Hello.
hello. Mr. Gill had joined the GCCA, bringing the 20 years of sustainability experience with a critical focus on the circularity and industry ecology in operational function goals. Mr. Gill, where are you?
I am currently sitting in Paris.
Oh, Paris. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much for joining. Okay, last panelist, last but not least, Dr. Tarek M. Tyler, the Director, Division of the Decarbonization of the Sustainable Energy, UNIDO. Please. Okay, thank you very much. His work experience spanned over the 22 years in a developed and emerging economy with a progressive focus on sustainable industrial transformation and energy transition, applied research, and capacity development, very wide area. So thank you very much for joining us. Okay, so it would be my great pleasure as I will be listen to the view of the distinguished 6 panelists right now. So I'm not confident, but I will be able to proceed well because given a limited time, only 1 hour of the entire panel discussion. Still, I would appreciate all of your understanding and cooperation. So let us start by asking Dr. Farsi, Mr. Badra, and Mr. Logiarty and introductory remarks touching upon the company's target of CO2 emission or ongoing activities to reduce emission. So let me start with Dr. Farsi. So first, Dr. Farsi, please provide all yours.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Professor, I'm Fathi, actually, the Quality and Product Development Executive Manager in ICEF Flat Steel. ICEF Steel is a Middle East leading steel producer and a major player in the global steel marketplace in the Middle East. We, as a fast-growing technological leader in the steel industry, ICEF Steel has a capacity to produce 7 million tons of long and flat steel products a year at 4 state-of-the-art steelmaking plants across Egypt. We have 4 state-of-the-art plants in a very premium locations in Egypt, in the north of Egypt, in the Mediterranean Sea, and in the east of Egypt, in the Red Sea, another plant, and we have another 2 plants in the delta, in the middle of Egypt, with a total production capacity of 7 million tons of crude steel with different steel products, from long and flat product. We use different state-of-the-art technologies for producing steel. As you know, steel produced all over the world by 2 main methods of production: a basic oxygen furnace and the blast furnace, and the basic oxygen furnace, which is producing 70% of steel all over the world, and 30% produced through the DRI and electric arc furnace and scrap route. We are in Egypt producing steel through this next route, which are using DRI and electric arc furnace, which is technologically proving that it's less emission of CO2 than the traditional one, blast furnace and oxygen furnace. We are in ICEF Steel striving to have a low emission in our production process. We have ambitious reduction targets to reduce our emission below 1 ton of CO2 per ton crude steel by 2030, in parallel to the Egyptian National Action for the Renewable Energy Plan for 2030. By 2021, we adapted our systems in all the facilities to the latest ISO 50001 standard criteria, which we confirmed by external certification audit. We, as a management approach for our company, we focus on areas to become a benchmark in CO2 emission by, as I said, to reduce the emission of CO2 below 1 ton CO2 to molten steel by 2030. We have also targeting to use the energy by efficient way, reducing the energy for to 19 gigajoule per ton crude steel, reducing water consumption, specific water consumption to zero effluent discharge by 2030, approaching zero landfill material efficiency, nearly 100% utilization of the byproduct and waste, investment in air pollution control and monitoring equipment to reduce dust emission intensity below 0.5 kilogram ton molten steel. In this manner, we have put some objectives to reduce energy. We have put some objectives. Let me give you some examples. In one of our plant in Steel Suez, which I am here now, I am speaking from the place, we have put to reduce a specific electric energy consumption target to reduce by 4% by 2023 in different stages. This started from 2021 and 2022 and up to 2023. We are aiming to reduce electrical energy consumption by 4%. We are aiming to reduce natural gas consumption by 3% by 2023. Increase awareness of energy matters to 80% of our employees by 2023. We have put a target action plan to reduce this energy to achieve the targets and the objectives, which I am telling now. We know, we determine the significant energy users in our plant. We know from the steel industry that the electric arc furnace is a huge technology or a huge energy consumption technology. So we put a focus on this area as a significant energy users to increase the oxygen consumption in electric arc furnace. This will reduce electrical energy, so we increase the oxygen consumption, we increase the oxygen injection to electric arc furnace to reduce the melting time by 2 minutes. This would reduce the electrical energy to reduce or maintain tapping temperature to a level of 1640, and to upgrade the chemical energy modules for in electric arc furnace. This will aim to reduce electric energy and hence will reduce the CO2 emission. We aiming also to use, you know, that the steel is transferred through a ladle furnaces or through a ladle. This ladle, when it's in operations, should be heated before. This heating already comes from using energy to consumption. So we keep this ladle, it's only 3 ladles, to keep it warm always, and to reduce energy consumption to reheat this ladle furnace. So all of this aiming to reduce energy and to achieve target. Last but not least, we have increased our tunnel furnace insulation efficiency to keep more heat in the furnace for reheating furnaces for our pellets to be re-rolled. So we make a good insulation for our furnace for achieving this target. Should I give you some figures that we already achieved? For example, in 2021, we could achieve a cumulative annual. We have cumulative annual electric consumption of 9 million kilowatt hour against expected 9,730 kilowatt hour. This is saving energy about 7.1%. Accumulative natural gas consumption is 49.8 million cubic meter against expected 51.4 million meter cubic, saving 3.2% from natural gas consumption.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Fassi, for your concise and but impressive remarks. So next is Mr. Badola. Please provide all your words. So please take around 5 minutes or so to give us introductory remarks. Please. Now,
thank you, Dr. Hasimo, and good morning, Dr. Tare,
good morning,
Amma, and other fellow panelists. And my thanks to UNIDO for giving us this opportunity to share our thoughts on just decarbonization of the industry. The decarbonization, when it becomes just, will become more scalable in the emerging and developing countries as well. As highlighted previously by Speaker Mr. Busso, His Excellency, the emerging economies have to undergo major infrastructure development, where cement and concrete industry will play a very critical role by providing low to zero carbon building materials to meet basic aspirations and at the same time meet the decarbonization challenges of the economy. I'm happy to inform you that we are working on the similar direction of growth and decarbonization. Let me share briefly about Dalmia Cement and how we build the right direction of transformation in our company for sustainable business performance through decarbonization. We are the fourth largest cement company in India with total installed cement capacity of nearly 36 million tons, which is spread across 14 cement plants in India. We created a larger purpose through the corporate vision, which is to be a leader in building materials and evoke pride now to all stakeholders through customer centricity, innovation, sustainability, and our values. We emphasized innovation, collaboration in the vision itself, and to meet this vision, we also created a business philosophy of clean and green is profitable and sustainable. Further, we interacted internationally and collaborated with multiple organizations in India as well as abroad. We visited multiple demonstrations of technologies in Europe and many other countries to see the developments happening on the low or zero carbon transition in the sector, and also how to organize them or how to introduce them, the decarbonization in the organization. Finally, in 2018, we committed to become a carbon negative, and we published this roadmap to become a carbon negative by 2040 with interim targets. It was the first such commitment in the whole tech industry sector in 2018 when we announced it at Global Climate Action Summit in California. The cultural change created through our vision, business philosophy, and bold climate commitments did create a multiplier effect within the company and also outside. Today, we are taking great steps to replace natural minerals like limestone as a waste from other industries. At the same time, we are also creating partnership with local municipalities and industry to reduce the waste and to dispose of the waste and to reduce the fossil fuel consumption. We have partnerships with more than 50 local governments and municipalities where we are using the non-cycle waste to replace fossil fuel. We have also implemented chlorine bypass dust systems in our cement plants, and we are in the process to implement further in our cement plants to increase the use of waste materials and replace fossil fuels. We are also setting up fossil-free electricity systems like waste heat recovery, solar PV power plants, cement manufacturing organizations, cement manufacturing plants, and more than 40% of the power generation capacity today is now fossil-free in Dalmia cement. Similarly, we have also taken steps to reduce climate risks from water-related aspects by taking actions within the plants and also for the local communities. We took the target to become water positive in 2015, and by 2017, we were the water positive cement company. The journey is continued, and by 2020, we became 5 times water positive cement group. And today, we are more than 13 times water positive cement group, with a final target to become 20 times water positive by 2025. Apart from working on the existing levers, we also work on new emerging levers such as carbon capture and utilization. We have partnered with Asian Development Bank. They supported us in a pre-feasibility study development at the initial stage of 0.5 billion ton carbon capture and utilization plant, and we decided to make this knowledge as available for the whole sector, and this report is available for the whole sector in the public domain. We experienced that actions become more innovative and sustainable through global collaborations, and therefore we have partnered with various organizations and various initiatives, like First Mover Sponsor, where we are funding the bulk. It works on creating purchasing commitment for the green products, low carbon products globally. Similarly, recently in the month of May, we have partnered with UNIDO for the development of next generation decarbonization technologies in the cement sector, which is part of the Green Strategic Partnership between India and Denmark. We have signed this MOU in the presence of our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, and Honorable Prime Minister of Denmark. We are also a member of UNIDO, which is a UN-based platform to propagate zero carbon roadmaps in various heavy industry sectors. At present, under this initiative and also under GCC initiative, India-specific net zero roadmap is undertaken. Because of many actions and many points that we have taken, particularly with technical mindset, we were able to reduce our carbon footprints by more than 43% as compared to 1990 baseline. The bulk of this change has happened in past 6-7 years. Our present carbon footprints are in the range of 468 kg per ton of cement, which is one of the lowest in the cement sector. And we have further targeted to bring it within 450 to 460 range by the end of financial year 2013. And this is well aligned to our interim trajectory of becoming carbon negative by 2040. So this was the brief of our targets and how we have taken those targets in our company. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Padula. Okay, next, Mr. Logiardi, please provide all yours. Okay, please.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity given to me. I'm Eni Logiardi from Mining Industry Indonesia. Our mine ID is holding in mining industry company in Indonesia that formed by the government to develop, to integrate the state-owned mining companies in Indonesia. We have a vision to be a leading global integrated natural resources company with a strong commitment to the society and the environment. Our commodities portfolio actually including from copper, gold, silver, nickel, thermal coal, and then the bauxite, aluminum, and also tins. So the company members or the subsidiaries of the mine ID is basically the large mining companies in Indonesia, such as Aneka Tambang, Bukit Asam, Timah, Freeport Indonesia, Vale Indonesia, and as well as Inalum. We are actually a young holding company because we formed 5 years ago, but with the portfolio that we have from the subsidiaries, we believe that we can manage our resources responsibly. That's why last year in 2021 we established our sustainability pathway as a foundation for us to ensure our ESG performance is better and better going forward. The sustainability pathway actually built from 6 pillars, and one of the pillars is about the environment and climate change, where decarbonization is one of our focus now. Based on our 2019 baseline emission that we measure, we committed to reduce by around 45% of the emission in 2030, or it is equivalent with around 60% of our 2030 business as usual greenhouse gases emission. And there are a lot of things, initiative that we set from the decarbonization roadmap, and with those commitment and also the program that we have, the last 2 years we can reduce around 330 kilotons CO2 equivalent of our emission. So we also conducting a lot of research and all of activities to make sure that all of our program that lies in our decarbonization roadmap can be implemented in the right time and in the right way. Because we also understand that when we choose to make transformation in our operation, we need to also consider not only about the emission itself, but also how we can operate efficiently, how we can ensure our competitiveness still on the ground, so we can pursue our target better and better. So we also targeting the net zero emission in 2060 as part of the government Indonesia aspiration, but we also searching more initiative to make sure that we can do faster, not in 2060, but probably in 2050. Therefore, there are a lot of exercise to make sure that the available technology as well as the economically viable of the resources, the technology, the policy, the regulation that can support us to make sure that all the initiatives can be implemented in the as per schedule. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lugiardi. Thank you, Dr. Fassi and Mr. Padura and Mr. Lugiardi. We have three concise and impressive remarks from steel industry, from cement industry, and mining industry. Both of these are king of the carbon intensive industries. So we are all understand deeply to how struggle your standpoint. So today, we have two representatives from Cement Association, Mr. Gio and Ms. Gensel. So please introduce us to your organization, briefly touching upon the relevant activities for today's discussion. So first, Mr. Gio, the floor is all yours. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Mr. Gio first, Gensel second. Yes, Mr. Gio, floor is yours.
So I go first.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm a little confused.
No problem. That's a small change. We can handle that. Now, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, wherever you are. I mean, it's really a privilege to be here. Thank you very much for hosting us and for giving us the opportunity to explain what we are doing here at the Cement Association. So I am the CEO of the so-called Global Cement and Concrete Association. This association represents about 80% of the world of cement outside China. So our members are all the majors, all the multinationals, but also very local companies across the world. We are basically members from all over the world. In Japan, Taiyo is member of our association, and we also have the privilege to have a lot of national cement associations. We have more than 40 national associations joining also our effort. Cemento is one of them, hello, and also Japan Cement is one of them. So I mean, it's a pretty comprehensive setup. We also have some distinguished members from China, in particular CNBM, the largest cement manufacturing company in the world, which produces on its own 500 million tons of cement every year. So why it's important? Why cement is important? Why cement and concrete is important? Because concrete is literally the backbone of the society we live in. You see a bridge behind me, here, whatever. But basically, the world lives on concrete, and it's because this material is affordable, because it's present all over the world, because it's relatively simple to use, and because everywhere on the planet, people, after eating, aim to have a floor on their foot, on a roof on their head, right? On all the civilized societies about making concrete, developing infrastructure, making development. So the essence or the goal of the GCC is really about the net zero transition of the cement and concrete industry ahead of the 2050 challenge and in line with the Paris Agreement. This is really our core goal. And as we did the roadmap is a word that we have heard already a few times this morning. We had actually a discussion with United Nations, which told us that by 2050, 3/4 of the infrastructure of the world needed in 2050 is yet to be built. So the world needs our material. There is no substitutes to concrete, or in a very difficult way. And because the world is concrete, we need to bring a net zero concrete to the world as an industry. We are custodian of that material, and we need to bring a net zero material to the world. And that's what we did. That's what we will do. And that's what we are presenting as the roadmap, the GCC roadmap, that was actually launched in 2021, in October, almost a year ago from now. It was a collective effort, 200 people working from 9 different regions of the world, gathering ideas on how we can actually make it happen, talking about technologies, talking about milestones, talking about deployment, talking about how this can be done. So our roadmap is, as I said, compatible with the 1.5-degree scenario of the Paris Agreement. It is possibly the largest sectoral commitment made to date by any sector over the planet. And it is really a commitment done by the CEOs of our members. So it's not me, it's not the association, it's really the CEOs that stands behind and say, we will make it happen. Dalmia is actually one of our members as well, and Mr. Singhi made this commitment. We have a very nice video if you want to see it on the website. Very quickly, our roadmap is about getting to net zero, but we also have a milestone on 2030, which consists of abating by 25% the footprint of concrete on the world, and this makes 5 billion tons of CO2 avoided in the next 10 years. So that's really a large commitment. And just a few words on how this will happen. I mean, we have the possibility to talk about it a little bit later in the panel, but basically it's all covering about a few levels. First one is efficiencies. How do we use the material? How do we use the material in concrete, in building? How much we use cement in concrete, and how much we use of the CO2 intensive material in developing the cement. So it's all over making sure that these things happens. The second element is about circularity. Make sure that we maximize on push as much as possible the circular opportunity. There are a lot of circular opportunity in our business. We use waste to energy to power our systems up to 90%, 95% has been demonstrated in some part of the world. We can really increase the circularity from construction demolition waste, and also the circularity in building. Try to reuse the pieces of walls, the walls of concrete, etc., etc. And these are an important element of the development. And then we have element of innovation, two in particular. The one is on products. we need to come with low carbon material in the market. On everywhere in the world, our members are launching actually new brands with low carbon, lower carbon, with footprints that are 30% to 50% below the standard cement on the market. Technologies such as the calcine clay development. I mean, maybe you have heard about these three letters, two letters on one word, LC3, which is a technology that has been developed over time and that is actually helping to reduce the quantity of the high carbonated content in cement. But there are other also coming on working, and these are for the product. And also innovation on CCUS. So carbon capture use on store is a big piece. I mean, it's about 36% of our reduction roadmap. And we count very much on that, and we have actually made partnership on with SEM CCUS in particular, with Tarek here present. Hello, Tarek. And we count on that technology to really launch and to get to the net zero, because ultimately we have to go to net zero. It's not only about reducing, it's really about going to net zero in 2050. And the technology of CCUS is the one that will enable us to really go forward. As you may know, but 2/3 of the CO2 produced by concrete is coming from its process production. So that means that it cannot be replaced by green energy, green electricity, etc., etc. So maybe just a last word for me, and I conclude with that. I mean, how do we make that happen? And that's probably the more important, and we'll come back on that in the panel. We have launched this Net Zero Accelerator, which basically consists of partnering with National Cement Association and also our members locally to think over how do we implement that global commitment with local actions. And it's really important because our industry it's a local industry. We are present all over the world. Our members are all over the world, as I said. And the issue is, how do we make sure that this commitment actually takes ground and gets deployment? And I think this is the core of the discussion we'll have in the panel. See how we make commitment happens. We have this program that is working actually pretty well. India is in a piloting country, in the piloting phase. That's really a key moment for us to prove and to make sure that the industry is doing its homework, and that we know where we go, what we need to change, and what needs to happen at the level of the locality. That's what is important, not at the global level. And this can be done everywhere in the world. So thank you very much. Looking forward to your questions to the panel on passing over the word.
Thank you very much, Mr. Guillaume, for your concise but excellent remarks. So next, Ms. Gensel, please provide yours.
Mr. Chairman, good morning, everyone, and good morning from Turkey, the city of Ankara. And I would like to thank to ICEF and UNIDO for their invitation to this esteemed organization. As you announced, I am representing the Turkish Cement Manufacturers Association. Our association represents 67 cement plants, some integrated and some grinding, and we represent more than 95% of the production. As an association, we are a bridge between the stakeholders and the industry, and we are implementing our task. And I would like to say a few words on production in Turkey. Cement sector produced about 80 million tons of cement last year, and nearly 25% of this production is exported. As Mr. Guillaume mentioned, there are two main streams for carbon decarbonization: conventional methods and innovative methods. In Turkey, our industry uses most of these conventional methods. The first one is using alternative fuels, and it is about 8% in Turkey, the thermal efficiency, thermal substitution rate. And as a sector and association, we are trying to increase this number. And in order to, we have some indirect emissions, and for reducing indirect emissions, some of our plants produce electrical power, waste heat recovery units, and some electrification. And some of our members have renewable energy investments. They have wind farms or some, they are using solar power systems. And of course, the industry is doing energy efficiency investments. And if there is a market producing low carbon cements. And some of our members also announced their 2050 or 2053 net zero targets. From the association side, as Mr. Gulio said, we are also a member of GCCA. We follow all the international documents on low carbon roadmaps of the SEMBRO, GCCA, International Energy Agency, and we disseminate all this information to our members. They are fully aware of the updated agenda. And 2 years ago, in fact, we prepared a detailed low carbon roadmap for the industry. This is an internal document, and it's not possible for me to give the numbers, but we believe that it was a good guidance for our members. We know that they use this guideline and they make their benchmarks and they prepare their roadmaps on this issue. And our roadmap also covered the zero carbon target, but of course this target has a big share for the innovative methods. And I would like to leave the bottlenecks and challenges related to these innovative methods for the next tour. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, okay, finally, the last but not least, panelist, let me ask Dr. M. Tyler for your initial remarks. So please introduce us to your organization, UNIDO. And we are UNIDO very well, but especially briefing touch upon the relevant activities UNIDO for today's discussion. So please, Dr. M. Tyler, floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Hoshino, and for moderating this and for the opportunity to speak here. And warm welcome to all participants in person and all the participants online. Let me start by saying sort of a little bit about UNIDO and why we're engaged in this. UNIDO is a specialized agency of the UN system focused on industrial development, particularly in developing and emerging economy. But we know that industrialization and industrial development also has to be aligned with the Paris Agreement, particularly as we see growth in industrialization in developing and emerging economies. And I think Mr. Kawaguchi-san highlighted very well the kind of challenges when we look at a particular set of industries, what we call the hard-to-abate sectors like steel, cement, that we have listened to now, and a few other sectors, fertilizers and chemicals. And these challenges broadly in the global context, he highlighted the key issues, the gap between the gap in technology between what is available commercially to get us to net zero today and what is needed in terms of commercialization and deployment, the huge investment that is required, particularly for certain sectors. If we want to go to the route of carbon capture and utilization, CCUS in cement, that is going to double the cost of cement. The same if we go with green hydrogen, that is going to double the cost of steel production. And of course, fundamentally, is there a demand if we push the industry to invest these huge investments? Will there be a demand for green commodities in the marketplace? And what is the role of governments there? And I think from that perspective, if we add also the context of the developing and emerging economies, we are looking at an additionally compounded challenges in the sense that the market dynamics in the absence of, let's say, global carbon prices, developing countries' industry and businesses might not even find the incentives to do the investment as we can probably see in some of the more advanced economies where there is fiscal incentive from the government, tax on carbon emissions. There is also subsidies on R&D to deploy. We don't see these happening in emerging economies, and that's why we think we wanted to play a role as UNIDO to create a level playing field for developing and emerging markets industry to participate in these future green commodities and be able to deliver these green commodities, not fundamentally because it's also part of the global trade, but because the demand, as was highlighted earlier in some of the statements we have heard from Thomas particularly, the two-thirds, three-quarters of the future infrastructure is yet to be built, and that is happening in emerging and developing countries. So the huge demand for strategic, vital commodities, industrial commodities, is happening and will happen in Africa and Southeast Asia and many of these countries. So a global effort is needed to make sure that the capacity of industry to deliver net zero green products is there from today, not delayed to the future where capacity is developed. So what we heard actually from the firms, the companies that presented now is a lot of these efforts today are focused on what's called the low-hanging fruits, the ability to do efficiency, and that will get us about 30% of the way. But we still need to work on the 70%, what I call the net zero pathway. The challenge there is, and that's where UNIDO can come into play into this equation. We felt that this is not a single country challenge, but what we need collective efforts to bring a global collaboration on creating the demand for these strategic commodities. So we've been working together with a number of countries under the umbrella of the Clean Energy Ministerials, which bring about 20 of the largest energy users in the industry worldwide, to create a momentum around initiative to catalyze, for example, public procurement as a vehicle to create incentives for industry to invest in green steel and cements. So by committing to purchase green steel or green cement, you give the signal to industry to invest in the technologies, the decarbonization technologies. And here we were very quite. I just came back from Pittsburgh last week, where I'm pleased to announce that at least we got four or five countries to commit to what's called a green public procurement pledge. Among them is India and the US and the UK, Germany, and a few other countries are joining this green public procurement initiative under the broader what's called the Industry Deep Decarbonization Initiative. But that's one part of the equation. But the second part of the equation is to build capacity and agreement and a global consensus on the definition of these low carbon or net zero carbon commodities. So we play our role as a convener, as a global convener, to bring convergence and agreement on standards for low carbon steel and cement, disclosure frameworks, reporting. So companies and firms need to be able to report credibly on the embedded carbon in their products, and also that these reporting frameworks are convergence or coherent. So we are able to compare apples to apples, not apples to oranges, so to create a level playing field for industry to be able to deliver, to disclose on the embedded carbon on a coherent and standard framework. Let me just conclude by saying few bullet points from the perspective of the UN on what is required to really move the agenda forward. At least from our side, what we think is required for an effective international development cooperation agenda to advance progress on the industry deep decarbonization. One is we need to support the development of national transformational pathways to climate and neutral industry by 2050 in developing and emerging countries. Countries need support to develop these pathways. We need to prepare a pipeline of projects and facilitate technology collaboration to unlock the first pilots. We don't see enough pilots happening to deploy the kind of technology we need in developing and emerging countries. We see some of these pilots happening in the north, in industrialized countries, but we don't see them happening. And pilots are necessary prerequisite for learning by doing and bringing the cost down. We need to foster dialogue to create common rules, as I mentioned earlier, and guidelines on market-oriented policies. And we need to establish an information clearinghouse that provide information on available technology solution and provide tools to de-risk the investment decisions. So these are 4 pillars we think are necessary to bring on board the industry in developing and emerging countries and the governments to catalyze the markets for investing in decarbonization technologies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tyson. So thank you for all of the panelists, of the 6 panelists, for your brilliant remarks. So now let us discuss to drill down the topics and deepen the discussion. So I would love to hear from any participants, any panelist with your perspective. So my question is, what are the most important success factor for achieving success in the transition of the just industrial decarbonization? So a similar question is, what is the most difficult challenge that companies or the carbon incentive sectors, such as steel or the cement sectors, face to make transformation change? Please answer any panelist. For example, so Dr. Percy, do you have any comment?
Regarding your question, Mr. Professor, about the challenge for the companies to decarbonization process, actually we face very difficult changes in the market due to the economic problems in the world now, due to the Ukrainian-Russian war, and due to the problem of logistics all over the world, of material transfer, due to availability of raw material, due to many things. We have challenging to even to invest in new technologies for decarbonization, as Mr. Dr. Trak said now in his presentation or in his speech. We need really some financial programs, as he said, to long term, to return to get the possibility of invest in new technologies. We have to get a feasibility of using the renewable source of energy. We have get this feasibility. We require the technology of utilizing the clean energy source in order to do a production facility. We have some lack of awarenesses and competences, like he said, in required to develop waste and recycling strategies to produce new technologies in steel industry, for example. We have a lack of transparency of future about the regulations and laws of carbon tax and carbon trade and whatever it's said. So we need actually a cooperation across this challenge of many different problems, not only related to decarbonization, but also related to the world economy crisis right now. From 2019, with the COVID problem, we are suffering from different effects of different problems due to this COVID-19. And when we are starting last year to run our business, or we faced this economic crisis due to the Ukrainian-Russian war. So we need, as Dr. Tariq said now, we need a support from these 4 pillars of UNIDO. We have used this before. The cooperation with UNIDO, we have get support from UNIDO, for example, for training, for some projects of cooperation to reduce energy consumption, like compressed air systems, to reduce energy consumption, like, for example, motor optimization. This was by UNIDO. We have some projects. We need cooperation with the North, with the research center, universities in the field of technology improvement, technology development in this field. For example, until now, European research centers and the Americans working in production of DRI, direct reduced iron, which is a feedstock of steel production process, by using hydrogen process to produce direct reduced iron, which is till now is not technologically and economically proven. So we are here, for example, in Egypt as an emerging country, we are ready to receive such technology or share in this type of technology by our knowledge and our experience, because we are already using the new technology of production, which is depend on direct reduced iron and scrap. We are not using the traditional process of blast furnace and oxygen furnace, which is already used all over the world. Most of 70% all over the world are used. We are using in Egypt the new technology of production. So we are almost 30 or 40% who are prepared for using a green hydrogen for production. And this not only in Egypt, but also in Middle East and Africa, because Africa is not a modern industrial area, but it is, as said now, that we are working on infrastructure for production. We are not yet improve our industry in Africa and the Middle East. We are going to build up to 2060, as African community said. We are going to use the raw material in Africa to be produced, to be reproduced and used as a final product. So I think, from my point of view, that we need to set a good cooperation with the North, in Europe and in Japan, in America, a set of projects operate in new technologies, to share this building of new technology, not to just watching that during they are building the technology and we are literally go to use. This will be this will not affect or not help to reduce the carbon emission activity all over the world.
Okay, thank you very much. So yes, we have a message from the Dr. Fassi with innovative technology to share with the worldwide is important. So Mr. Padora, do you share your perspective, Dr. Fassi's perspective, or do you have any other opinion? Do you have any comment, Padora-san?
Thank you, Dr. Hosino. Definitely, I think from the success perspective, it is very important to enter early into this transformation journey of net zero, having a long-term vision, long-term perspective with roadmap, with interim targets. So it helps a lot. It creates organizational level focus on this particular transformational journey. And in our organization, we have witnessed it in 2018 when we announced this carbon negative roadmap, and when we started on this journey, we have been able to create a lot of acceleration in the existing levers, whether it is deployment of renewable energy, whether it is deployment of waste heat recovery projects, whether it is use of circular economy levers like use of waste instead of fossil fuels, use of waste instead of natural minerals. All this was accelerated, and because of that, we were able, within 6-7 years, we were able to reduce our carbon footprints, which is now about 43% less than our 1990 baseline. So it is one of the success factors to enter early and then create an organizational level focus. As far as the challenges are concerned, I completely agree with Dr. Tariq. He has given very good summary of the kind of challenges that we have been facing in emerging economies and developing countries. There are pilots and demonstration projects which are very much required. As far as the existing technologies are concerned, there we have been doing very nice job. Here we have been able to improve on energy efficiency, whether it is renewable energy deployment, whether it is waste heat recovery deployment. There we are doing fantastic job. And let me give you an example of waste heat recovery. Long back in 1998 or 99, there was one demonstration project which was set up. One or two demonstration projects were set up in India through partial funding from developed world. And they were the only two projects which were set up. And afterwards, it's all commercial deployment based on commercial financing. But the know-how and the capacity development those two projects created was so significant that today we have more than 600 megawatt, 500 to 600 megawatt waste heat recovery power generation currently deployed in India. Similarly, we need such success stories in specific areas like heat electrification of the kilns, or like carbon capture and utilization, where we can install some one or two demonstration projects for the know-how to create local capacity and to create local technology developers, to reduce the cost of the projects and also to localize the technology for the development of the new sector itself. Similarly, from the just transition perspective, it is also important to create the local jobs and some policy dialogues and policy developments, particularly with respect to wastelands, sustainable biomass. That would also be very, very critical. In India and globally, there is in emerging economies globally, I think there will be a lot of wastelands which is available, and that wasteland can be used for the sustainable biomass cultivation, where tree crown cover also goes up. So basically the carbon sinks go up, and at the same time, the sustainable utilization can also replace the fossil fuel in the industry. In India alone, there is about 26 million hectares of land that has been identified by Ministry of Environment and Forest as wasteland. If fraction of such lands are available to the industries for sustainable biomass, I think very good case studies, very good success stories can also be developed through this route by creating local employment as a just transition vision, by involvement of local communities, local villagers for the supply chain of that biomass, and increase the forest cover and reduce the fossil fuel consumption in the industry. So I think these are some areas where through just transition and through deployment of policy, technology, as well as the finance. In India, currently we do not have project-based risk finance or performance-based grants like it was identified by Dr. Tariq. So in that aspect also, we need to have some policy levers or some incentives available to continue developing basically cement or steel industry in developing countries, so that we can create some success stories.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Badrasa. Based on comment from Dr. Pharmacy or Mr. Badrat, my question, my impression, the first impression is we must strengthen the most success factors for the decarbonization, mostly in emerging economy. So my second question is come up into what is all of your views of creating the enable environment for, and in other words, what kind of the support of the initiatives for the companies of the carbon incentive systems in emerging countries, such as technology, capacity, and finance, and network, and partnership cooperation would help to create an enable environment for companies of the carbon incentive systems in emerging countries. So let me ask Mr. Guillaume or Ms. Gensel or Mr. Dr. M. Tyler, any of the panelists to please answer or have a comment, please.
Maybe Mr. Guillaume Thomas wants to jump in.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. I can agree.
Yeah.
No, in my view, there is really two elements that are essential in terms of enabler. One is the regulatory framework, and the other one is the financial community. I mean, with the sense of urgency on with the definition of the roadmap, basically, we have heard from everybody in the panel. The industries are defining objectives, measures, means to go ahead. The thing is that we are running against time. I mean, we have to be in the 1.5 scenario. We have to be there by net zero by 2050. And this is a run against time. And if you look at, you were talking about the weather context in the introduction of this discussion. And I'm fearing that this is only an appetizer to what is coming if we are not doing our job there. So the industry, I think, is really moving forward in defining all that. I mean, we have in cement, we have in steel, we have all deploying these visions, this long-term vision on how our industry can adapt and still be in time for this 1.5 rendezvous. Now, what we need really is a strong support from these two spheres of people. I mean, let's start with the regulator. I mean, we need to have support on innovation. You know, it cannot be that these innovations are matured alone by the industry. So we need to have some systems to give the chance to innovation and to shorten the time of this innovation maturation, if you want. We need also to have this vision over the infrastructure. We talked about hydrogen for steel. We talked about carbon capture in cement and in steel. We need to engage with the government and say, okay, now how do we deploy this infrastructure? And who's going to be, putting that in place? Another example is we need to also understand the time it takes to do these projects. I mean, we are talking about significant industrial projects here. And when you consider how much time we need to actually have a permit, have the authorizations, have the planning, have the authorization for building, etc. I mean, we talk about years of planning. For the cement industry alone, we need something like 2,000 CCS carbon capture units to be installed in adjacent plant or in current plant or in new plants. That's a huge number. So we need really to anticipate that all over this decade to make sure that the pace of deployment then comes shortly in that. I continue with the regulator, but we need also to discuss about education. We need welders. We need people that are able to manage this project, to manage these new technologies, to manage this new development. So I mean, there is really a number of things that needs to be done. On all that, we need to have that. While on this was Tarek emphasizing that managing also the level playing field. So we need to really have a competitive context that allows still competition, allow risk to be taken, reward people, but make sure that there is a level playing field into the system. So it's fairly complex on that. The regulator has a huge work there to be done, and we are really happy to partner with initiatives like UNIDO, the demand, the IDDI, the discussion on the demand signal, which are fundamentally important to shift the industry forward. I give you an example of the power of this demand. I'm in a country, in France, where the legislator has decided that in 2 years, there will be no more individual gas heating system in new building. Okay, so this is forbidden. You cannot build now a new house, a new apartment, a new refurbish, a new something with a gas system to heat yourself. You have to use other technologies which are green, which are not emitting carbon. In France, it's powered by nuclear to a large extent. That's a very important shift. With that, you make a decision that will drive the industry into a direction, and that's the power of demand signals. So these are really important. And maybe a word on the financing community. I think there we need really to also have a trustful discussion and understand, how we can share risks on all that. How we can actually, have and invest into companies that are walking the talk. I often talk about the first mover disadvantage. Today, the companies that are making the first effort on carbon capture, because the market is not regulated yet, because there is not yet the reward of the first mover there, you take a risk, and the financial community is not ready to absorb that risk. So we need also to have there discussing about through taxonomy, through different methodology of loan, of lending monies, through active discussion also from the shareholders in companies to say, look, guys, this is the way we need to go. We need to go there collectively. So it's very important that this coordination is taking place. I heard many of the panelists talking about new way of cooperating. This is absolutely the case. I mean, we have to reinvent the way we cooperate. We talk to each other from an industry through its value chain. In cement, for example, the cost of the net zero technology, the carbon capture, will increase the cost of cement production by 70%. But if you look at the cost of that technology into the built environment, into a final house, into an infrastructure, we talk about 3-4%, right? I'm talking about big infrastructure or things like this. I mean, so at the end of the day, the final customers, they probably are ready to pay that additional cost. The question is how we actually push that cost forward into the value chain, and how do we make sure that this is actually accepted by everybody. So cooperation across the value chain, cooperation across industries, with steel industry, where you talk about the hubs to create carbon capture, to create hydrogen, to create the solution for use of carbon. Cooperation with innovators. How do we accelerate our site initially? How do we accelerate the time for innovation or make it available? How do we test this innovation through accelerator platform, innovation accelerator platform, to make sure that this is actually taking place, and that the technologies are made available to the industry forward. So there are plenty of things like this that we need to change, and we are running against time. I mean, the clock is ticking. We have to get there, and for me, this is one of the major challenges. Getting all this discussion organized smoothly, quickly, and then the role of organization like UNIDO is really fundamental, as Tarek said in its intervention.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Q. Thank you for your detailed comment. So I'm asking Dr. M. Tyler, do you comment?
I don't want to add to what Thomas said. I think he captured essentially all the key elements. Let me just bring it from the perspective of international cooperation on this arena. And I think there's fundamentally two areas where we feel it's necessary also to advance this agenda. One is cooperation on the standards. We need to get the standards that firms comply with in terms of disclosure on embedded carbon agreed, so that companies are not submitting different requirements for different countries, and that create confusion in the marketplace. So international standards, agreed standards on embedded carbon, disclosure methodologies. There's an opportunity there to really fix the elements around these through international platforms, and we were happy to support that process if required. But I think that is a fundamental component, is that if we create, because these commodities, some of them are internationally traded and global in nature, and firms are global, So countries need to collaborate on getting the standards right around net zero or near zero commodities.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have a question to Dr. Mtaira, similar question, but what do you think should be a future role of your UNIDO? So under the circumstances, each company begin to take individual action, or will your organization, I mean UNIDO, is harmonize of that action or creates a common strategy?
We are an agency that is accountable to our member states, and we have all our members, basically 150 member states, so we respond to their request, and I think our role is to create a platform for dialogue, for consensus building, for convergence on technology standard, but also to facilitate know-how and capacity building and collaboration triangular between the north, the south, and the south and the south. So I think we offer this platform to facilitate that transition, and I think, as Thomas said, we cannot wait too long because the cycle of investment in these decarbonization of the hard-to-abate sector is long-term. We're talking about 30 years of assets. So to actually reach net zero by 2050, a production facility that deliver net zero 2050, the planning of that facility needs to start now. So our effort is to catalyze policy action across different arenas to create the frameworks for these investments to happen in the next 10 years so that we are net zero by 2050.
Okay, thank you very much. So I believe that each panelist made several insightful comments that suggest that to solve this challenge, the difficult challenge in reality in the future, we need to find a realistic and ambitious way to mobilize the technology, sharing the technology, and funds or appropriate bridging the gap between supply and demand. So we find that we discuss more about this agenda under the UNIDO's leadership, so the instrument and unable to condition that the international partnership and the cooperation will play and the facilitate role that they can play and acting the just transition to the decarbonization of the industrial sector, especially in the material industry. So now let us move on Q&A sessions. Sorry, we have remained about we have about 20 minutes remains the question and answers. All the participants, please remain seated. There are questions from audience direct to you. To ask questions, the panel members, for those physically attended here, the members, please raise your hand so that ICF Secretariat can bring your microphone. Any questions? Raise your hand, please. Or those participants remotely, please write your question in the comment box. I believe you are familiar with how to do it. Any question? Any comment? Okay, please.
Well, thank you very much, Yoshino-san and Kawaguchi-san, and I'm Tyler. Thank you very much, and other distinguished guests, and thank you very much. My name is Tsuruda, working for government agency, and I'm sure there's no doubt about the role of the industries towards the purpose of decarbonization, and of course, international cooperation is very important, and of course, the role of the Indo is getting more important than ever. And my question is a little bit different angle, but in this morning, I think there was a great discussion about the relationship between so-called geopolitical landscape or geopolitical agenda and energy policy raised by Kennedy Professor O'Sullivan, and that was quite interesting discussion. So I'd like to ask in a frank manner, but to Mtaira, how those impact, I mean, how do you assess the impact created by like geopolitical tension, for example, right? Like Russia's aggression over Ukraine could affect, could have an influence over the company's effort toward decarbonization process. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for your question. So this question should be Mutaira-san, please.
Well, thank you very much for this question. I think we discussed also in the morning session, you're rightly, the implication of the geopolitical situation on the energy transition, and to what degree actually the geopolitical context today is slowing down the efforts of industry to decarbonize, particularly when we talk about strategic investments in what I call hard-to-abate technologies like CCUS and hydrogen. And what we are observing is actually the momentum still going on forward. There are what I call the immediate implications that, of course, Africa is suffering a lot from the disruption in energy supply and the rise in costs, affecting, as we also heard in Egypt, the rise of prices, the increase in the cost of for example, coal, even as a feedstock in some of the cement industry, has affected the viability of industry to just remain profitable in a what I call low-margin industries. These are very particularly cyclical industries, and many of them are basically low-margin industries, particularly in developing countries. So industry does not have the appetite and the capacity to invest even in upgrading the technology, in any measures that there is no margins to borrow to even do the necessary low investment for low-hanging fruits, let alone to go for investment in advanced decarbonization technologies. So this is we see that reluctance now, but I believe that this is a cyclical trend, and hopefully we're able to transition to that, because we see also at the same time momentum around investments built on international alliances and geopolitical alliances, again, for also certain advanced technologies. We are seeing a lot of projects around green hydrogen and MOUs being signed and agreed between Europe and Africa, for example. That is also driven by the geopolitical context. But if I have to make one remark, particularly on certain commodities, we need to get the world on board. We cannot do steel and cement decarbonization without China and India being fully on board and engaging in the technology development and deployment at scale.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So we have two more questions. And one question is to Ms. Cannon. Please answer it, please. What are the skills and the talent required to achieve transition to industrial carbonization? So what are the talent and the skills required? And Ms. Cannon, can you?
Thank you.
Yes, comment.
Yes, thank you. Let me give the example from Turkey. In fact, in Turkey, we have a framework. We have a net zero target. Our government has a net zero target. We have a national roadmap to align with the EU Green Deal, because we are neighbors and we have so much export to EU. We had a climate summit and we have conclusions. Our government will submit a hydrogen strategy, and all these frameworks contain emerging technologies, and they are addressing the technologies and bottlenecks. The main bottlenecks are the capacity building, technology transfer, and finance. But it's right, it will be provided, but we don't know who will supply, what will be the partners for this financing. The sector should co-finance these investments, but as Mr. Emirtiat said, there is no appetite for the industry. So it's really difficult. We don't have large-scale funds in Turkey. We have some funds from the EU. We make some research and development projects, and our association is participating to one of them. But in Turkey, there is still, not for cement, but not for all, but for all industries, there is even no pilot plant or another research project. So unlocking this finance and technology transfer is the key, and it should be defined who will do it, how it will be done, and how much. This is the main question for an emerging country, emerging industry like Turkey.
Thank you very much. So we have final question, and the question to Mr. Royaldi. So the question is, what is the little tricky question? What is the biggest or most common misperception about the transition to the industrial decarbonization? Can you answer it?
Yeah, thank you for the question.
Yeah.
I think the most of the misperception is about how we focus only on the changing the source of the energy without actually elaborate more robust on the problem itself. Means that we just focus to change the for instance the diesel fuel with the hydrogen for example, but then we also facing the difficulties on the applicables and affordable technology that can be implemented in the location, especially for us in the mining sector, in the remote islands, for example. So we are in the mine ID, the mining industry in Indonesia is using the circular economy approach to make sure that our ESG transformation, including the decarbonization roadmap, is not only focused on how we reduce our emission, but actually how we develop our competitiveness on our value chain, as well as how we can add more values to the society, to the environment that live around our operation. And in the end, it will be also benefiting to the company and also the country that will benefit from the initiative. For instance, we use our ex-mine site to not only to be reclaimed with the revegetation that can absorb the emission, but also how we can add more values from the social economic aspect to the community around us, so they can also benefiting the values, the positive impact of that reclamation program. So it will be a double win, not only for the company, but also for the society that can benefit the values from that program.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So now we have the almost exhausted time that we need to close the session. So let me thank Dr. Hasi-san and Mr. Badora and Mr. Loyardi now. So Miss Gensel and Mr. Gio and Dr. Tarek M. Tyler. Thank you very much all the participants again for their participation and all the informative presentation and remarkable remarks and comments they provided today. So let me turn my microphone to Tori-san, please.
Thank you very much again, Mr. Hoshino and all the panel members for profound and detailed discussions. So before going into the next agenda item, let me make a housekeeping announcement. Due to the time and some technical constraints, please allow us to upload the video presentation by Ms. Vass from IEA on the ICEF website later. We apologize for this inconvenience, but please kindly check out the ICEF website later on. So with this we have now reached to the final agenda item of today's side event. I'd like to invite Mr. Yuko Yasunaga, Managing Director of the Directorate of Corporate Services and Operations of UNIDO, for making his closing remarks. Mr. Yasunaga is remotely joining with us today. So, Mr. Yasunaga, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The Excellencies, the distinguished speakers, panelists, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Yasunaga from UNIDO. First of all, on behalf of UNIDO, I'd like to thank all the speakers and panelists who kindly participated in this event. I would also like to appreciate audiences for your interest in this event. We have lively discussions and the questions and answers which made the event fruitful and successful. Today, the many attempts from iron steel industry and cement industry from various countries are introduced. And we learned that variety of the efforts are already started and to be started and to be further promoted, including measures to overcome the technological difficulties by research and development, and the measures to attract investments and raising funds for unclear future, and the measures to create the sound market mechanism to facilitate the active transaction. Yes, it is true that the challenges that we are now facing for decarbonizing the industry is huge and complex. This is not so easy way. A lot of efforts are already ongoing, yet we need to do more with scale and speed, regardless to we are now in developed countries or in developing countries. There are room to bridge the gaps in terms of policy, finance, technologies, function of market, and the human capacity to make this transaction just and feasible. For that, I believe that there are facilitative roles which international organizations like UNIDO can play, as well as many governments and the various academia and the industrial sectors. The overarching theme of ICEF innovation is the key to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement. This is also aligned with UNIDO's motto, Progress by Innovation, whereby UNIDO serves as a hub of knowledge and expertise, and the source of best practices to spread innovation. UNIDO is willing to support the world to address this complex yet doable task, contributing to, in particular, inclusive and sustainable industrial development. With this, I would like to conclude my closing remarks and thank you again for all of your participation today. Thank you very much. どうもありがとう。
Thank you.